Most people believe they stay in painful situations because they are weak, unlucky, or lacking courage to leave. That explanation feels comforting because it places the problem in character, not in the design of the human mind. You are told that if something hurts long enough, you would naturally move away from it. Yet people remain in draining jobs, hollow relationships, and environments that slowly erode them, even when escape seems possible. This behavior looks irrational only if you assume the human mind is designed for happiness. It is not. It is designed for survival, and survival does not always mean improvement or relief. Often, survival means choosing the familiar pain over the unknown risk of change. What you call endurance is frequently fear wearing the mask of loyalty, patience, or responsibility. The trap begins when suffering becomes predictable, because predictability signals safety to the nervous system. A painful routine can feel safer than uncertainty, even when it is quietly destroying you. This is why people defend what hurts them, rationalize it, and even feel threatened by the idea of leaving. The mind confuses endurance with control, believing that if pain is familiar, it can be managed. You may tell yourself that things are not that bad, or that they will improve eventually. These thoughts are not optimism. They are psychological sedation. Staying becomes easier than confronting the fear that leaving might cost you identity, belonging, or meaning. What makes this illusion powerful is that it feels responsible, mature, and rational from the inside. Outsiders see stagnation, but you experience stability, even as something inside you slowly contracts. This is not a rare flaw found in broken people. It is a common pattern wired into normal human behavior. Most individuals do not stay because they enjoy the damage, but because leaving feels like a deeper threat. If this feels uncomfortably precise, it is because this channel examines patterns most places avoid naming directly. If you want to stop living in psychological darkness and understand the truths people rarely articulate, click the subscribe button now. This is not about motivation or escape, but about seeing clearly what is actually happening inside you. Before understanding why people remain, you must first let go of the story that they simply fail to choose better. The truth is colder than that, and it begins beneath conscious choice. To understand why humans stay, you have to abandon the idea that the brain prioritizes well-being over threat reduction. The human nervous system evolved in environments where survival depended on minimizing uncertainty, not maximizing satisfaction. Unknown territory once meant predators, starvation, or exile, not opportunity or growth. Because of this, the brain learned to treat the familiar as safer than the unknown, regardless of comfort. Familiar pain registers as predictable, and predictability lowers biological stress responses. Unfamiliar possibility, even if objectively better, activates threat detection systems automatically. Your body reacts before your reasoning engages, steering you toward what it already understands. This is why the brain often prefers known suffering over uncertain relief. Staying becomes a form of nervous system regulation, not a conscious decision to endure. The longer you remain in one situation, the more your identity fuses with it. Your brain begins to encode the environment as part of who you are. Leaving then feels less like a change of circumstances and more like a loss of self. This is not emotional weakness. It is neurological efficiency shaped by evolution. The brain conserves energy by maintaining existing patterns rather than creating new ones. Change requires heightened alertness, learning, and adaptation, all of which are metabolically expensive. Staying requires less energy, even when it costs you slowly over time. Social survival further reinforces this pattern through attachment and belonging. Humans evolved to depend on groups, and separation historically meant vulnerability or death. As a result, the brain associates separation with danger, even when separation is necessary. This is why toxic environments can still feel emotionally binding. Your nervous system mistakes proximity for protection. Hope also plays a role, but not in the way people imagine. Hope often functions as delay, allowing the brain to postpone the threat of change. As long as improvement feels possible, leaving can be deferred indefinitely. This keeps the system stable while preventing decisive movement. Over time, the brain recalibrates expectations downward to match the environment. What once felt unbearable slowly becomes normal. This adaptation is praised as resilience, but it often masks slow psychological erosion. The mechanism is not dramatic or conscious. It is quiet, efficient, and deeply human. You stay not because you failed to see the damage, but because leaving feels biologically unsafe. Understanding this removes moral judgment, but exposes the machinery underneath. And once the machinery is visible, the consequences become harder to ignore. The most damaging effect of staying too long is not the situation itself, but what it quietly does to your sense of self. When endurance becomes routine, your identity begins to organize around tolerance rather than desire or intention. You stop asking what feels right and start asking what feels manageable. Over time, this reshapes how you define strength, responsibility, and even love. You may notice that your inner voice becomes quieter, less specific, less demanding. This is not peace. It is signal loss. The longer you suppress the impulse to leave, the more the mind adapts by lowering expectations. What once felt unacceptable slowly becomes the baseline. This recalibration protects you from constant distress, but it also erodes clarity about what you deserve. You begin to confuse endurance with character, suffering with meaning, and familiarity with purpose. Identity narrows as options feel less imaginable, even when they are still technically available. You may feel older than your age, not physically, but internally. A quiet heaviness replaces curiosity, and forward motion feels abstract rather than urgent. This is how stagnation disguises itself as stability. Relationships formed in these conditions often feel oddly hollow, even when they are long-lasting. Connection exists, but aliveness does not. You might function well on the surface while feeling emotionally postponed underneath. At this point, many people mistake numbness for maturity. They say they are realistic now, less emotional, more grounded. But realism without vitality is often just adaptation to chronic constraint. If you recognize this pattern in yourself, type the word staying in the comments. Not as a confession, but as a signal of recognition. Because recognition is often the first thing that returns when identity has been slowly compressed. The danger is not collapse or breakdown. The danger is becoming someone who survives everything, but lives nothing. When this happens, even imagining change feels intrusive, almost irresponsible. Your nervous system resists disturbance, even when disturbance is necessary for growth. You protect the situation because it now protects your psychological equilibrium. What is lost is rarely dramatic. It is subtle preference, spontaneous joy, internal permission. You become highly functional and quietly absent from your own life. This absence is easy to miss because it does not hurt sharply. It feels dull, steady, and strangely permanent. And permanence is where the real damage settles. To see that damage clearly, the final layer requires something different from action. It requires recognition without escape. Recognition begins when you stop asking why you cannot leave and start asking what part of you learned that staying was safer. Not safer in reality, but safer to a nervous system trained to equate familiarity with survival. This is the moment when judgment loosens and observation becomes possible. You see that much of your endurance was never a conscious choice. It was a biological reflex repeating itself long after the original threat disappeared. The environment may have changed, but the internal alarm system never received the update. So it kept choosing predictability, even when predictability became corrosive. When you notice this, the story of personal failure begins to dissolve quietly. What replaces it is not empowerment, but something colder and more precise. You begin to see how often your sense of obligation was actually fear of disintegration. Fear that leaving would collapse identity, relationships, or the fragile structure holding everything together. Staying was not loyalty. It was continuity. Not love, but attachment to what already existed. Recognition does not demand movement. It simply exposes the cost of remaining unconscious to the pattern. You may notice how often your language softened reality to make it livable, how you called erosion patience and numbness stability. This reframing kept the system running while slowly emptying it of vitality. The unsettling part is realizing how reasonable it all felt from the inside. Nothing screamed danger, nothing forced a reckoning. That is why so many people stay for decades. The system works well enough to avoid collapse, but not well enough to feel alive. When you see this clearly, there is no dramatic emotion, only a quiet awareness of how long survival has been mistaken for living. You may also notice something else equally uncomfortable. No one trapped you here. The trap was inherited, not imposed. A strategy passed down through nervous systems designed for another world. Recognition does not break the pattern immediately. It simply removes the illusion that the pattern is virtuous. And once the illusion fades, what remains is not direction, but honesty. The honesty that staying was never about strength. It was about avoiding a fear older than your current life. Most people never see this. They just age inside the situation and call it fate. The quiet truth is this: many human lives are not destroyed by sudden tragedy. They are worn down gently by environments that feel too familiar to escape.